What's up guys, I'm Nico of CamCrunch, and in today's video I'm going to be doing a review on the Canon 6D. Now the reason why I picked this up was because although I'm happy with my smaller cameras, I really want to do some more reviews of DSLR lenses moving on. So I wanted to get a full frame camera because I do have a crop censored camera which I'm using to film right now, but to give sort of a full view on a full frame lens, you'll want to review it on a full frame camera. So I picked this up and I've been using it for a while now, and this camera is sort of the weakest DSLR that you can get right now in terms of its specs on paper, but I really enjoyed this camera, especially moving on from a Canon 5D Mark II, which I had previously. This is definitely a step up above that camera. So I want to talk about the stuff that I like about this camera, but also the stuff that I don't quite like or what can be improved about this camera, so that those of you that are planning on picking up a full frame camera, you sort of get a whole view of what this has to offer, and you might want to choose something else based on this review. So let's start off with what's important about a camera in the first place, and that is the image quality. It's got an all new 20.2 megapixel sensor in it, which is very high resolution, more than what most people would actually need, and it has a Digic 5 processor, Digic 5 Plus processor, which is much better than what was on the Canon 5D Mark II, and that really translates to better low light performance. I've been using this camera at 6400 ISO with many of my shots, and I even pushed it up to 12,800 ISO, and even at that range it still holds up pretty well. Now this goes up to 25,600 ISO natively, and you can push it up to more than 100,000 ISO, but I haven't really gone there, mainly because I haven't really needed to with the 2.8 lens that I'm using here. But for those of you that maybe are using an f4 lens, then that 12,800 might be good for you, and even the 25,600. One of the things that people didn't like about the 6D when it first came out was the autofocus, because it hasn't really changed from the 5D Mark II. The 5D Mark III, on the other hand, is a beast in terms of autofocus, but this one kind of just inherited the Canon 5D Mark II autofocus. However, the sensitivity of the middle cross point is actually more sensitive. It's sensitive up to -3 exposure value, which means you can pretty much shoot with a middle focus point in very low light situations, and it's still going to get that focus. In terms of build quality, this is sort of the perfect camera for me. It's a sort of a mixture between the Canon 6D, 60D, and 70D series, so it's that kind of size. It's a little bit smaller than the 5D series, but it's also got the hump of a 5D Mark II, so it's sort of got the similar shape as you can see here. And I sort of like this mixture of the two different cameras. I always found that the 5D Mark II was a little bit too big for my hands. My hands are sort of medium to smaller sized, little girly hands. So this one is, just right for me. And for those of you with smaller sized hands like mine, then this camera might be perfect for you. Now, one of the downsides to the shrinking of the camera is that you lose a lot of the buttons that are in, like the 5D Mark III. And one of the buttons that I miss specifically is the zoom in and zoom out. This one has the zoom in and zoom out button right here, but what you have to do is you have to click it, and then you have to use the wheel to scroll into your image and then scroll out. I much rather have the dedicated zoom in button and then the dedicated zoom out button. But I've gotten used to it over time, over using this for, the amount of time that I've had it. So it's not too big of a deal, but again, I'd much prefer the zoom in and zoom out button. Another thing to note about the build quality is that unlike the older brother to this, the 5D Mark III, this isn't a fully magnesium alloy body. It's got a magnesium alloy body for the most part, but the top is actually made out of plastic. And the reason why they did this is because this actually has a feature that the 5D Mark III doesn't have, and that is built-in Wi-Fi. And for that Wi-Fi to get a strong signal, you want at least a certain part of your camera to be plastic and not metal, so that you can transmit that signal a lot better. So that signal is a lot stronger. And I guess the top part is the one that maybe makes the most sense because of the placement of the Wi-Fi chip. Maybe that's what they had to do. But overall, I haven't found this to be an issue at all. In fact, if you just feel around the camera, the whole camera pretty much feels the same. You can sort of tell the metal parts from the plastic parts just based on the coldness of the feeling of that part, but the feeling in general, if you disregard the temperature, it's all the same and it feels pretty rugged. So, you know, it's not too big of a deal. So now let's get on to some of the features that this camera has that I do like. Some of these are found in other cameras while others aren't. And the first one is the built-in Wi-Fi. What I use the Wi-Fi for, or what I've tried to use it for, was just to transfer the files onto a smartphone. And for that, I think it's a really good feature, and I really wish that all cameras moving forward have built-in Wi-Fi so that you can transfer your phone images to your phone, and you know, that would be really nice. Another cool feature that this has, and I think that the 5D Mark III has this, is the silent shutter mode. And what you do is you change it in the drive mode. You can sort of choose the normal shot, continuous, but you can also choose silent, single, and silent continuous. And this is how it sounds. It's a little bit longer of a sound, but it is definitely softer. In comparison, this is how the regular shot sounds. This one's more aggressive. Now, one of the downsides to using that softer shutter is that the blackout in the viewfinder is a little bit longer to sort of match that sound. So, you know, it's a little bit slower. The mirror flap is a little bit slower. So now that I've talked a little bit about what I like about this camera, I do want to mention a few of the things that can be improved, or the things that I think should be in this camera already. So the first thing is the card slots. This takes an SD card, which I do like. I do like SD cards more than CF cards. For one, they're cheaper. I just think that they're, you know, easier to handle. They're smaller. I do like SD cards. But the problem is that this only has one SD card slot. And when you're paying, you know, like $1,600, $1,800 for a camera, however much this costs now, you want dual card slots. It seems like it's a standard these days. Now, I don't have too big of a problem with it because, first, I'm not really a professional. And secondly, I've never had a camera with dual card slots, so I haven't had that experience yet. But again, it just seems to be the standard today. Another thing that can be, you know, improved on is the flash sync speed. This has a 1/180th of a second flash sync speed, which is pretty low. Usually a camera with this spec would have a 1/250th of a second flash sync speed. So having just a 1/180th is a little bit of a downgrade, especially compared to the Canon 5D Mark II. But if you're shooting with flash and you're shooting with manual flash, you won't see too big of a problem, I guess. And if you have something like the Yongnuo YN622 like I do, you should be fine with high-speed sync using this camera. So again, it's not too big of a deal breaker for me specifically, but it's something that I think should be noted in this camera. So overall, this is a very great camera. This is probably the only full-frame DSLR I will ever need ever again. There's no real reason for me to upgrade from this. So if you guys want a full-frame camera and you're sort of upgrading from a crop sensor, then this is definitely one to consider, especially when you're on a budget. Now, if you want faster autofocus, more autofocus points, a full metal build, then maybe the 5D Mark III is the camera for you. But honestly, most people don't need all of the features that the Canon 5D Mark III has to offer, and the 6D is more than adequate. Again, it's a step up from the 5D Mark II, which was really the staple for most photographers for the time that it was out. It was the 5D Mark II or the D700 from Nikon, but I think that most wedding photographers did use the Canon 5D Mark II. So again, you know, this is going to be more than good enough for the majority of the people out there. I'm going to have links down below to the camera body, as well as a link to the full written review where I have more sample photos, and a link to the lens that I've been using on this camera, which has been really great. It's the 24mm f2.8 IS, the new one, which has received sort of a price drop and now has a sort of a sale. So go pick that up if you like the images that you see. So that's it, guys. That's it for the review. I'm Nico of CamCrunch, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.